Hello everybody. So you're on the program English Through Cooking, which is produced by the English Without Borders Network. English Without Borders is a program from the U.S. Embassy in Dushanbe, Tajikistan that's designed to teach English and help English teachers throughout all of Tajikistan learn how to connect and unite and build their capacity. Why are we cooking? Because cooking is fun and everybody loves to cook, and more importantly than that, everybody loves to eat. So today we're going to learn some English vocabulary and some English grammar through learning how to cook. My name is Alex Noppe. I'm the cultural attaché at the U.S. Embassy, and of course, one of the most important parts about sharing culture is sharing cooking. So today I'm going to make a very classic American recipe, and this is American chocolate chip cookies. Now it'll be a little bit different because I'm going to be using mostly ingredients you can find in Tajikistan. One of the most important being it's very hard to find chocolate chips here in Tajikistan. So I'm going to make up some ingredients and I will show you how you can make your own delicious chocolate chip cookies without actually needing to bring in ingredients. All things that you can find right here in Dushanbe. So let me show you what we have today. Making cookies in general takes about 4 steps. So the first thing that you always put in cookies is you mix together some sort of fat and some sort of sugar. So today, for our fat, we're going to be using butter. In some cookie recipes, you'll use oil instead. For the sugar, I use 2 different kinds of sugar. So I use traditional white sugar that you find everywhere in every market. I'm also going to be using brown sugar. Brown sugar, I think it's possible to find in Dushanbe, but it might be a little difficult. I like brown sugar because it makes recipes more rich and a little more flavorful. If you can't find it here, you can just use all white sugar and your recipes will be okay. So after you add the fat and the sugar, the next thing you add is what we call wet ingredients. So wet ingredients are things like water, oil, eggs, vanilla, juice if you're using juice in a recipe, anything that's wet, as opposed to dry ingredients. And so in today's recipe, we have just a couple wet ingredients. One of them is eggs. You'll find eggs in almost every recipe. The other one, this is vanilla extract. So this is made by taking the vanilla bean and submerging it in some type of alcohol, either vodka or rum, for a very long time until it turns into vanilla extract. Vanilla extract is delicious in most baked goods, in cookies and cakes. It's also a little bit hard to find in Tajikistan, and so if you can't find vanilla extract, there are a couple things that you can use to add flavor to your food. One of them could be something like bourbon or rum, if you want to put alcohol in your food. You also could use honey, and you find honey all over the place in Tajikistan. If you're going to use honey to add flavor instead of vanilla extract, remember that honey is sweet, so use just a little bit less sugar. I should also mention, for anybody that cooks using something like rum or bourbon, when you cook or when you bake, all of the alcohol boils off. So there actually isn't any alcohol left in your recipe. If you're somebody that doesn't drink alcohol, that's totally okay because there's none left in the actual cookies. All you get is flavor. So that's step 2. Wet ingredients. Step 3 is dry ingredients, the most important of which is flour. Most recipes have flour in it. In this recipe, I'll also use baking soda. What baking soda does is it makes your baked goods rise a little bit. I will also use a little bit of salt. You find salt in most baking recipes just to balance out the sugar. All right, so that's step 3. That's what we call our dry ingredients. Step 4 is all the fun stuff. Step 4 is what makes chocolate chip cookies chocolate chip cookies. And so I like to use a lot of fun stuff in my cookies. And so today, we don't have chocolate chips, but what I'll do is I'm going to cut up chocolate bars, which you can find everywhere in Tajikistan. I'm also going to put some nuts in cookies. In this case, I will use walnuts. That's my favorite nut to use in a cookie. And because these are extra special, since this is the first program of English through cooking, I will also put in M&Ms into these cookies to make them extra delicious. Let me talk about one English thing very quickly, and that's actually the word to cook. So the word to cook is a very general word that we can use for a lot of different situations. You can cook meat, you can cook vegetables, you can cook fish. You can also cook breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I can cook inside, I can cook outside. I can cook by myself, I can cook with somebody. It's a little bit like the Russian word gotovit, where you can use for a lot of different situations. One situation that you shouldn't use the word cook is when you're making cookies, or cakes, or pies, or breads. It sounds a little strange in English to cook a pie. Instead, you use the word bake. So we bake a pie. Or today, I am going to bake cookies. I'll show you just a couple of the other tools I'm going to be using today. We call these measuring cups. You can see they look more like a cup. And this is for things like flour and sugar. We call these measuring spoons. Obviously, they're spoons. I'll also use a couple different other kinds of spoons for my recipe today. I've got a big knife so that I can chop up the chocolate. Here's another good English word, to chop. So to cut something might mean I cut it once. When I chop, I cut it into little pieces. So because I'm going to take these chocolate bars and make them from one chocolate bar into a lot of little pieces, I'm going to chop them. And that's how we use the word chop. The other couple things that I have today, I have a bowl that I will mix everything in. And finally, I have cookie sheets. That's exactly what these are called in English, is a cookie sheet. I think it's time to start cooking. So, step one, of course, is to mix the sugar and the fat. So we're going to use our two kinds of sugar. And for these cookies, we'll use 1 cup of white sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar. Brown sugar is a little interesting because when you cook with brown sugar, you actually want to pack it into the cup, so and push down on it. And that's the right way to measure brown sugar. And so I have a nicely packed cup of brown sugar. It even stays in the cup. And then I'm going to mix that with butter. In the United States, we measure butter in a couple different ways. We might measure butter using cups. We also might measure butter using sticks. Now in the United States, when you buy butter, you get butter in long sticks, and each stick is about 1/2 cup, or about 112, 113 grams of butter. And so a lot of recipes will say, put a 1/2 stick of butter in, put a whole stick of butter in. In this case, we're using 1 cup of butter, and that's 2 sticks. Now that you have the butter and sugar, you mix it up. Okay, now that we've mixed together our butter and our sugar, it's time to add the wet ingredients. So we will add eggs to this. So 2 eggs, and then vanilla extract. And so we'll put 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then we mix that in. Okay, now that you've put in your wet ingredients, it's time to mix in your dry ingredients. And so again, that's baking soda, salt, and flour. Now in this recipe, when I put in baking soda, I actually mix the baking soda with just a little bit of water first in order to mix it in a little bit better. So I will mix 1 teaspoon of baking soda in 2 teaspoons of water. Mix it up and put it in. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You don't need very much salt. Mix that just a little bit, and now I'm going to add flour. So in this recipe, we need 3 cups of flour. And then mix all of that up. When you get to the point of adding dry ingredients, you don't want to mix too much. So just from here, mix it until everything is combined and no more than that. At this point, everything should be mixed in, and you have a nice soft dough that's very easy to handle. With some cookie recipes, it's a little easier to use cold dough, so you might put it in the refrigerator for maybe an hour before you make cookies. With these cookies, you don't need to. This dough is very easy. This is probably a very good time to turn on your oven. You always want to do what we say in English, preheat the oven. In other words, turn it on and get it up to the necessary temperature before you put your cookies in. So for this recipe, the temperature is 175 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually in the United States, our recipes are in Fahrenheit. So go turn on your oven, and now we're going to put in the fun stuff. So now we're going to chop up some chocolate and some walnuts, so we can put that in this recipe. I use about 3 chocolate bars, so I have lots of chocolate. The more chocolate in the cookies, the better they are. If you're trying to measure this out perfectly, I might use about 2 cups of chocolate chips or chocolate chunks. I use about maybe 3/4 of a cup of nuts, but all of that depends on how you like your cookies. Do you like your cookies with lots of chocolate, not very many nuts, lots of nuts, no chocolate, all M&Ms and nothing else? All of this really depends on what you want to put in your cookies. So I actually, you notice, I don't even really measure out the walnuts. I just grab a handful and chop them up. And then all of this goes in the cookies. And one more. And mix. The very last step is to actually make cookies. Grab spoonfuls of cookie dough, put them on your cookie sheet. I like to make cookies that are nice and big, because the bigger they are, the better they are. So, a nice big spoonful. Make it into a ball, and then push down on it just a little bit. And now put them in the oven for about 10 minutes until they're just a little bit brown on the edges. You of course don't want to overbake them, otherwise your cookies will get very hard. Thanks so much for watching this episode of English Through Cooking, presented by the English Without Borders Network. You can find a lot of great content for English teachers and learners through English Without Borders at ewb.tj or look up English Without Borders Network on social media. I hope you enjoy the cookies. I hope you enjoy your experience baking them, and Eid Mubarak.